Welcome to the DFO Rundown Podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Greger on dailyfaceoff.com. Delivered by DoorDash.
Welcome to episode 70, the Dmitry Kulikov episode of the DFO Rundown. It's brought to you by, as always, Fantrax. Getting close. Season starts on Wednesday. Get in now. It's the best customizable fantasy platform out there. If you want a keeper league, a dynasty league, a redraft league, get it all. And if you go to fantrax.com/DFO rundown, you will get the opportunity to win a signed Nathan McKinnon jersey. So get in quickly. Frank, welcome to the show.
Jason, what's going on? It's finally arrived, the start of the season.
Start of the season's here, yes. Happy Thanksgiving Day to all of our Canadian listeners and viewers. And I think in the U.S. now it's Happy Indigenous Peoples Day, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct, yep.
Yeah, so either way, everybody's celebrating a day off. So that is nice.
Except for us.
Yes, except for us. You're doing double duty today. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the program. As welcome Frank into the woodjerseys.com studio. See the brand new one? Seattle. It's looking good. Looking real good. The detail's fantastic. You'll see Frank's Toronto Maple Leafs one. You can get all the teams. Check it out at woodjerseys.com. It looks great in your fan cave or studio. And Frank, there's lots to get to. Before we get to our Western Conference preview, because we did the East last episode, two big contracts announced. We touched on a little bit. We didn't have the details in the pod on Friday at the time, but Barkov gets a $10 million deal for him.
The hometown discount.
Yeah, well, hometown discount, still 10 bills. And then you look at Zibenjad, and he gets his at 8.5 for 8 years. Which deal do you like better?
Well, it's hard not to love the Barkov deal for the reasons I just mentioned. I mean, I saw Alexander Barkov with what he provides, how he produces, being a Selke candidate every year. I see him as 11 and a half. You could make the argument he's a $12 million player, I think. And to get him in at 10 is an enormous win for the Florida Panthers. And I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if people picked up on this or not, but on his Instagram, I think Jonathan Huberdeau had a post, and it was something like, so happy for Sasha, congratulations, blah, 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 the usual. And then Barkov left a little comment under there, I saved some cookies for you. And I was like, huh. I mean, and that's really the basis of it, right? Is I think the Panthers went to Barkov and said, look, your goal is to win. Our goal is to win. We want to make you a really wealthy person. How can we do this in a way that also allows us to re-up Jonathan Huberdeau in a year's time when he comes up? Huberdeau, I think 2 straight seasons in the top 10 in scoring. He's going to be due a sizable raise as well. And so I think he probably comes in somewhere. If Barkov's in the 10s, Huberdeau's in the 9s, I would guess, somewhere in that range. And, that sets the table for Bill Zito in terms of what he needs to accomplish.
Yeah, I really wonder how many players at some point are going to look and say, okay, you know what? Yeah, I want my money, but I want to win. And you can't put a price on that. And it's pretty clear that hockey is still an ultimate team sport. And, if you take an extra million or what, because you think that's what you're worth, well, that's really the difference of a trade deadline acquisition of getting a Blake Coleman, for instance, like Tampa Bay did, or a Barclay Goodrow. And those guys are hugely important to the success of a team come playoff time. And I'm curious as they go forward, because you're seeing more of a gap between the top end player salaries and the bottom end, but the bottom end guys still play a lot come playoff time.
They do, but I mean, if you look at Florida's cap situation, you're going, okay, $10 million for Sergei Bobrovsky, like,
oh yeah, that's
not
not
even
good.
Be our starter. Like, I mean, like that's where you get caught up in trouble. It's not.
Yes.
It's not with. You can never go wrong with Barkov signing him to an 8-figure deal. You just can't. He's that key to your team's success. Sergei Bobrovsky, like that contract, like it still blows my mind, because if you think back to it, there was such a little market for him. So few teams could afford to pay him. It was the Islanders or the Panthers. That's what it came down to. And I don't know, feel like they bluffed their way to an unbelievable deal. He probably should be making half or 6.5 or 7 in terms of a reasonable AAV on a 5-year deal, something like that.
Oh, Wholeheartedly, man. The minute, like, there's a few contracts, the minute they were signed, before the ink was even dry, you're like, this is a bad contract. There's that one. The Jeff Skinner coming off his only 40 goal season. You're paying him $9 million for a small winger who's basically a 60-point player. That was ridiculous too. So Zibenjad in New York's an interesting one for me because if you look at his last 3 years, it's been 74, 75. And if you prorated last season, it'd be 73 points. So that's pretty consistent. Now, the 75-point season came when he just lit it up in the second half of 2020. And
like 20 goals in 21 games or something like that.
He was the hottest goal scorer in the NHL that year, finished with 41 in 57 games, right? Like, he was on fire, but that's a little bit of an outlier season, I think, for him. He's probably, for the next few seasons, I think you look and say, hey, if Zibenjad can get us 73 to 77 points, maybe one year he bumps it up to 82 or 3 or 4. That's all right. And I look at the Rangers, though. It's funny, Frank. The Rangers haven't won anything. Adam Fox is due a contract at the end of this season. They're going to have Capo Caco coming up in Lafreniere. Like, they got a lot of money, and their goaltender, they got a lot of money already committed to guys. I'm fascinated to see what they're going to do moving forward with their salary cap situation, because Ryan Strome right now with the Zibenjad raise, it's almost impossible. Like, he signed a 1-year deal. I don't think they can afford him next summer.
Yeah, look, he may very well see the same fate that Pavel Buchnevich did, right? Like, you're taking a 60-point player and you have to unload him purely for cap reasons, taking a really good player out of your lineup. I would imagine that Strome faces the similar type situation. I mean, what do you pay Ryan Strome? And to the same effect, I would have to think that the Zibenjad contract takes the Rangers pretty much out of the mix for Jack Eichel. I mean, look, you have Panarin at 11.6. You're going to now have Zibenjad at 8.5. Zibenjad being your top line center. Do you really have room for another $10 million player? I mean, I don't see it unless the Sabres are willing to retain a bit, and I don't see any reason why they would. Obviously, they have the cap room now, but if you think that team's going to be any good in the next 5 years, you don't want to be retaining a significant amount, maybe a little bit to make it happen. But I think, the Rangers are pretty well constituted, provided that they can get this next wave of players to really make a dent. And we talked about them in our Eastern Conference preview, but I like the Zibenjad contract. I think it's reasonable to start. My only concern is that since it is 8 years, what does he look like in years 5, 6, 7, 8? Because I think he's one of those guys that could age really poorly. But I think if you're the Rangers, you're saying that's another management team's problem to have.
100%. It is a fair comment about very few GMs look 8 years down the road. It's why I think if the NHLPA wanted more active money staying in when the salary cap goes up, I've always said it, after the age of 28, 5-year max contracts. Just do it. Because if Zibenjad got 5 years and whatever, he got $9 million instead of 8.5, then at the end of those 3 seasons, he's still making $45 million. He'll still probably get a contract after that. It just won't be 8.5. And I don't know if the PA would ever agree to do it.
I was going to say, why would that be in the PA's interest to enact that kind of term limit?
Well, because it saves, rather than having, look at how many buyouts over the years the Rangers had. So now you have guys who aren't even in the NHL taking away money from your salary cap.
I get it, but those players are also, that's for Zibenjad, that's the difference of like $20-some million in security.
No, I get, but it's a small percentage of players, right? So it's benefiting the majority for an extreme small percentage of the minority right now. And I just wonder if that would ever switch. And the thing is, it benefits the teams and it benefits the whole collective group of the PA if they look at a big picture, right? And like you look at the NBA. And the NBA relies on their superstars more because they simply play more minutes. Mm-hmm. And they only have a maximum. They only have a maximum 5 years.
This is a really interesting diversion, but I was having this conversation with a front office staff member from around the league this week. And I said, we were talking about the NBA and how the players play all those minutes. And this just, have me go on this rant for a second, if you don't mind. What if, you and I made this argument about Barkov, actually. This is how it started. I said, you could make the argument Barkov is worth a lot more than 10. And he said to me, well, you could make the argument that no player in the NHL is worth more than 10. And I was like, what about Connor McDavid? He's probably worth 20 in the real scheme of, the cap and how it works. And he said, for my money, no one is worth that kind of money because he only plays 22, 25, 26 minutes a night if he's lucky. And I was saying, well, what happens if in Connor McDavid's case, we're going to play him 35 minutes a night. We're going to run him out there every other shift. We're going to use him after every TV timeout. We're going to use him to start periods. We're going to take our timeout and use him then. Find creative ways to get him a break and get him right back out there. 30 seconds, a minute, right back out. And the thinking was Connor McDavid, for the difference between the 20-some that he plays now and 35 or whatever the number is, for that length of time, A, does his body adapt, and B, is Connor McDavid, even at 50%, worth and makes your team so much better than another player at 100%? And his answer was like, no way, that'll never work, because your body just shuts down. When you play at that type of speed, your heart rate at somewhere between 160 and 180 for that stretch of time while you're on the ice, your body just shuts down and can never handle it, can't do it. But I'm looking at McDavid, I'm going 2209 last season, career average 2133. How can we find a way to get that much more out of these guys? Is he really playing the most that he could to make your team better?
Frank,
have you thought about that at all?
Dude, I've debated that for many years with people. Now, I didn't go as high as 35, but I was like, you know what? Why can't you get up to 28 or 29? It would have to be a change in a mindset of how you watch. So you wouldn't expect Connor McDavid to have to give you maximum back pressure on every shift, right? Because you'd look and say, the reality is not every odd man rush turns into a goal anyway. If you're just playing the odds, because if you watch the NBA superstars, they're not up and down the floor every time. Now it's a different game. Sometimes you'll go slow. They got a shot clock. So I understand that, but you also can glide in hockey. You can't glide when you're running or walking. And I looked at McDavid and I actually talked to Connor about this, and Connor's played some games of 27, 28 minutes a night. He said, I didn't feel any different. Now, there was even times he went back to back where he played 27 and 28 minutes. And I think what it is, Frank, it's really most of us as a human race, we are opposed to change. This is what we see. This is what we like. This is what it's always done. But if you go back to the 80s, they didn't track time on ice. And there was lots of people who swore that Gretzky played 28, 29 minutes a night a lot of the times. Now, the game was a little bit slower pace. But if Connor McDavid even slows down and plays 80% of his speed.
I said 50.
Yeah, but he's
Connor
still
McDavid at 50 is so much better than half the Oilers lineup, the bottom six at 100.
And plus, if McDavid starts doing it, then Matthews does it, and then Pasternak does it, and Marshall. So every other team is starting to do it. Now,
it's not mindset to me in terms of the players changing. It's a mindset in terms of the coach changing.
Yes, agreed.
You hit the key point already in this show, the ultimate team sport. Maybe everyone loves the team dynamic and all the hockey cliches that go with it. We instead of me, all those other things. That's great. But I think the game would be better for it.
Yes. Oh, you get rid
especially if more mistakes are made in addition to that.
Yeah, it would lead to more goals, which seemingly is what the NHL's really deep down opposed to, because somehow more goals means that the more celebrating. I'm like, do you watch the NFL? The NFL has more points now than they've ever had. I don't hear anybody saying, wow, there's too much offense in the NFL. Like, if there is, there are 0.01% of people complaining. I'm with
McDavid
you, Frank.
Playing
I'd be all for it.
2209 is insane.
Yeah,
like that is a Ferrari that's capable of easily playing 30 plus a night. Yet it's the team dynamic, this idea that we need to get our third and fourth line active and activated. I don't know what sense that, I'm starting to think that's a significant change that the game needs to make. This is a philosophical discussion that you'd have to get someone's going to do it at some point. Someone's going to start pushing the envelope. I don't know why teams think that, the body will adapt. The human body does amazing things. Like, they'll find a way to keep playing and get more out of these guys.
Oh, hey, remember when the AHL used to only dress 10 forwards, right? So it's not like in pro sports there hasn't been examples where it's being used. So it's definitely worth looking into, Frank. You will get zero complaints from me. I would be right behind you leading the charge to say, have the best players play more minutes.
Who's going to have the courage to do it?
I'd be all over it. All over it. Now, let's get to our Western Conference Rundown presented by ESPN Plus, and they become a must-have for hockey fans. Get access to more than 1,000 out-of-market NHL games and 75 weekly national games. Plus, stream thousands of live events from the best leagues and the biggest tournaments in the world. Exclusive originals, the complete 30 for 30 library, premium articles, and fantasy tools. And also much more with ESPN Plus. Sign up now at espnplus.com/NHL/DFO.
Look, if you're in the US, that's the only way to watch hockey this year. That's how I'll be watching all my hockey is on ESPN Plus, because there is no more NHL TV anymore. There's no Game Center. This is it. This is the only option to watch all the out-of-market games.
And they're going to have lots of new camera angles and everything too, Frank, are they not?
Yeah, we saw that from Gary Bettman this morning, making an appearance on Good Morning America, the commissioner, saying 5 new camera angles. So interesting to see what that broadcast looks like.
You know what? I think that would also be a great thing, because the one thing about the NHL is the camera angles being so far away, as fast as the game is, I still don't think it gives it a true feel of how fast it is. Because you ask anybody, you go sit down in the first 3 rows of the game, and then you go sit at the first row of the second deck. The game looks infinitely slower, even though it isn't. It's just vantage point. So then you take that into consideration. So I hope these camera angles are more close to ice level and grasps and allows to really accentuate the speed of the game. And I think it's going to blow the minds, because there's even the diehard fans, there's very few who get to sit low enough to really see how fast it is.
Yeah, and that's the difference. I encourage everyone, if you can, any reporter out there that likes to criticize from their perch, go down and watch it from the first row or two, and it's a different game.
No, it's a mind-blowing different. All right, let's start in the Central Division. Frank, give me your 1 through 8 teams to make the playoffs.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Colorado at number 1, Winnipeg 2, Minnesota 3, Dallas 4, St. Louis 5, Chicago 6, Nashville 7, Arizona 8.
All right. And I have, Colorado, shocking. I think we all picked Colorado. Everybody in the league, I think, picked Colorado to finish first in the Central. Then I have Winnipeg, Minnesota, Dallas, Chicago, St. Louis, Nashville, Arizona.
You know what's fascinating? The lack of respect that the Winnipeg Jets have gotten. You look on PointsBet, I think they're plus 1,700 to win the conference, plus 4,040 to 1 to win the Stanley Cup. Like, why not that team?
And the Jets I like their team. They got Connor Hellebuck, man. Anytime you got that, like, he stole them the series against Edmonton, outplayed them in almost every game, and Connor Hellebuck was the difference. Like, he was unreal.
And the team has playoff success. They've won I think it's 3 rounds in the last 4 years. They got to the conference final in 18. They've got one of the best top 6 forward groups in hockey.
Yep.
They bolstered their blue line. They finally sort of found the duo to replace Dustin Byfuglien, which I think really hurt that team last year. Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon on the trade market. And you mentioned Hellebuck in net. Like, that team to me has all the components of really being a heavyweight contender coming out of the West.
Yeah, there's lots I like about their team there. You would hope maybe they would augment their defense a little bit, and that's something that maybe happens at the trade deadline. But goaltending and forwards, I think, are right up there, can compete with a lot of teams, no question. Like, I think they clearly have, I would say they got better goaltending than Colorado when the season starts. I don't think there's any question there. So,
I picked Darcy Kemper to win the Vezina, so I don't know if I agree.
No, okay. Well,
I think he was the best goalie available, and they went out and got him.
Yeah.
I think I think if he's at full health,
yeah,
he was the best goalie available this summer by a mile.
Was he better than Grubauer?
I think so.
Okay. Because the last 6 years in the NHL, Grubauer is one of only 3 goalies over 6 years combined to have a .920 save percentage or higher. And the highest is Ben Bishop at .922. So you're talking, points.
I think what Kemper was at something like .917, and he played on god-awful teams in Arizona. Grubauer at least did it in Washington and Colorado.
Yeah.
I like career average. Kemper. So Kemper's career average over 4 years in Arizona was exactly .920, and his career average over 9 years in the NHL is .917. So I don't know. To me, I think he was the best goalie available.
All right. Well, then they got it. So we'll see. Colorado is pretty good, man. Their biggest issue right now is they get injured at the worst time. Like they've had such terrible luck with injuries at the worst part of the season near the playoffs the last few years. And so if they could somehow avoid that, then I think Colorado is definitely have a really deep playoff run. Now let's go to
wait a second. The one team not getting any respect, people aren't talking about nearly enough, Jay. The Dallas Stars. I think they just had everything that could go wrong for them last year go wrong.
Yep.
They're much healthier now. And I think they've bolstered their team a little bit. That defense is going to move the puck like nobody's business with the way that they're able to skate. They add a really subtle defenseman in Yanni Hakanpää that rounds out their top six. Their goaltending, they have too many goalies. Ottinger, Hudobin, Holtby. I mean, if Ben Bishop gets healthy, what are they going to do in the crease? All good problems to have. Ryan Suter has plenty of game left. And the way that they retooled their bottom six, Luke Glendening comes in. I think he's a fantastic face-off guy. Michael Raffle can give you some speed on the wing. I mean, I don't know. I think this Stars team could be a really sneaky dark horse after having so much success in the bubble, getting close, have that last year, people stop talking about you, they forget about you, to come back and be really strong.
Yeah, I really like Dallas when the playoffs begin. I think that's a team that's built to win in the playoffs. And, in the regular season, I don't think they have the horses to run with Colorado and maybe not even Winnipeg's top six. But the playoffs, we all know, is just a different style of game. And yeah, you're right. Come playoff time, the Dallas Stars, again, right, like Tyler Seguin's coming off an injury. How good is he going to be? How much big of a boost will that be to their offense? I would think significant, of course. My big question, Frank, is, is Jamie Benn going to bounce back to being the player that we kind of thought he was for 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, and Tyler Seguin for that matter too. I mean, how healthy is he? Is he able to get back? Is he 90% of what he once was? Is he 95? There's lots of question marks about both those guys earning some real significant cash on the cap as well. I want to ask you too about Chicago. How much did you flirt with them being a playoff team? How close do you think they are, and what are the odds they get in?
Well, that would give away my playoff teams if I answer that now, but I actually have Chicago in the playoffs.
Run through your 8 again for me.
I have Colorado, Winnipeg, Minnesota, Dallas, Chicago, St. Louis, Nashville, Arizona. So I have 5 out of the
That means you got 5
Central.
coming from the Central. Okay.
Yeah. And
so what do you not like about St. Louis?
Well, Chicago has basically added 6 significant pieces because Jonathan Toews didn't play last year. Kirby Dach played 18 games coming off an injury. So to me, those are your 1 and 2 centers that you have now this year. Mm-hmm. Then you throw in Seth Jones. You throw in McCabe, who I think is grossly underrated. He's a really good defenseman. You throw in Marc-Andre Fleury, who's going to help their team. My biggest question is Chicago's defensive system going to change? Because I talked to players, I talked to scouts, they felt their defensive structure last year was awful. And so are they going to tweak that? If they do, with the talent they have, I just think that they got more talent. St. Louis.
Did you mention Seth Jones?
Yeah, I mentioned Seth Jones and McCabe. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, because think about that's basically your top 2 defense, Frank, your top 2 centers and your starting goalie. Mm-hmm. That's pretty significant changes, right? So I look at St. Louis. I don't know if St. Louis, maybe, I don't know why. There's something about their team speed. I could be easily wrong. Yeah, I could be easily wrong with them, but something about the Blues just, they don't seem to have the team makeup. I'm not sure how, how's the Tarasenko factor going to be? That's a big wild card for me. And I think
they're overpaying a couple defensemen.
Well, the problem with their defense, Frank, is they still got Parayko, but you look at their Stanley Cup winning defense to their defense now, it's significantly different. And you talked on the last pod about a guy who's grossly underrated, who brings you a lot, is Joel Edmondson, right? So he's gone. You got Pietrangelo gone. You got Jay Bouwmeester, of course. Yeah, he retired. Different story. But when they won the cup, their defense was mobile and huge, right? Mm-hmm. Excluding Vince Dunn. But Vince Dunn could still skate, right? He played a good role in the third pair. Now their defense has a lot of guys, but Torrey Krug's playing lots of minutes. Falk's playing lots of minutes. I'm just not sure they're as good defensively as they were when they won the Cup.
Well, and they're paying those guys all pretty significant numbers. Falk, Krug, and Parayko 6-5 a year through 2026-27. And the other question mark is, I have a little bit of an uneasy feeling about Jordan Binnington. I don't think he was nearly good enough last year at 9-10. I do like the Buchnevich edition. Yes. I think Saad will give you some, he'll chip in his 20 goals here. But, I mean, when you think about the pieces that they plucked off of that team, they're just missing a lot of goals. Schwartz, Hoffman, all that. I mean, that's a lot of guys that aren't going to be producing. I mean, I'm with you. I think St. Louis sneaks in at the end of the season, but I actually have Craig Berube in my 32 bold predictions today. That's on dailyfaceoff.com. I have him as the first coaching change. He enters this season on the last year of his deal. The fact that there hasn't been an extension after 2 first-round exits. Yes, they won the Stanley Cup. This is their 3rd season since, but those 2 first-round exits, I think, have him on the hot seat a little bit. Especially without a deal following this year.
Interesting. Like I'll be honest, like when it came down to St. Louis and Chicago for that last spot, it was very tight. Like if the Blues get in, I won't be surprised at all. Right. Like my one asterisk beside the Blackhawks is, well, they've added all this talent and also added Tyler Johnson. Is their defensive structure going to be any, because if you have all the good players, but your defensive structure isn't good, then basically you're neutering your good players. So that to me is going to be the wild card. But man, Patrick Kane, like that guy, he's kind of the freedom fighter of offensive players in the NHL. Because if you look around the league, like when McDavid and Draisaitl, they're both elite, but they still get to play in the power play together. McDavid, and then you got Marner and Matthews, and you got Pasternak and Marchand, and you got McKinnon and Rantanen. And then there's old Patrick Kane, and he's out there flying around, scoring 30 or 40 more points than anyone else on his team pretty much every year, except when Panarin wasn't there. And it's like, I know DeBrincat's come up last year, but I don't put DeBrincat in the Marner or the Rantanen or the Draisaitl.
Not yet.
Consideration.
He's got to do it again.
Yeah. And so Patrick Kane, what he's done, the last few seasons in Chicago is truly amazing and shows, like, for me still, when he gets the puck on his stick in the offensive zone and he starts winding it up and he starts low and then he's the most dangerous player in the league because he's so confident with the puck. And he just, like, you talk to defenders, he's like, McDavid kills you off the rush. But off of that offensive high cycle, and no one does it like Kane, I think he's the best in the league at that specific play.
I could see them getting in. I mean, there's been lots of buzz about Chicago and whether they're close or not, but I don't know. I could see it for sure. I just don't have them there just yet.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, yeah, there's going to be the Central's to me kind of like the Metro. There's going to be a good team who misses, maybe 2.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's get to the Pacific Division, Frank. For me, I thought the top 3. I think there's 3 obvious top 3 for me, and then after that, it's kind of a wild card as who's gonna finish next. I actually have Edmonton for the first time since I've worked in media, picking them to win a division. They haven't won a division. They have the longest division winning drought in the NHL. The last time they finished first in their division was 1987. The Islanders is 88, but the Oilers is 87, and I think that they end that this year. They'll finish first, followed by Vegas, then Vancouver.
I saw your pick come in, by the way, and I was like, well, this guy, what a homer.
Dude, trust me, I picked the Oilers finish last more times than I've ever finished to pick the playoffs.
That's amazing.
Then I have Calgary, LA, Seattle, San Jose, and Anaheim.
Okay, so we're pretty similar. We have Calgary and LA flip-flop, and I'm with you, though. I think only 3 teams get in from the Pacific. I've got Vegas 1, though, Edmonton 2, Vancouver 3, LA 4, Calgary 5, Seattle 6, Anaheim 7, and San Jose 8.
Oh, you have the Sharks 8, Anaheim and Sharks switched. Okay.
Yeah. So the hard part for me was figuring out the 3rd, 4th, and 5th spot. I think that's where the biggest jumble is. I like Vancouver to get in and have a big bounce back year.
Yes.
You have a healthy Elias Pettersson. You add a Connor Garland. Honestly, I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson is going to have a really good season.
Me too.
I think he's going to bounce back in a big way. You reshape your defense a bit, add in some vets, and I think Thatcher Demko is right up there with some of the best in the league. I see Vancouver in the sports books. PointsBet has Vancouver at 88.5 as their over.
Yeah, I would take over on that for sure. Because it's not like Garland and Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Elias Pettersson only played 26 games last year. Obviously, health is a small concern for him, but he comes back. He's elite. Garland and Oliver Ekman-Larsson are so much better than the $12 million that they shipped out in that trade. Right, like it's not even close. It's not.
That was
not
some
even
masterful work. Like I don't think Jim Benning's gotten nearly enough credit. I know he's been ripped for a number of different things, and I think it's even fair to include some criticism on Travis Hamonic and not doing your homework on that over the summer, signing him to a new deal, him being on waivers, of course, as well to start the year. But I think dumping those contracts that were an anchor on your team, essentially what you did is you made a bet. You kicked the can down the road. You said, look, our issue is getting rid of those contracts now. We need to get into the playoffs this season. And if Oliver Ekman-Larsson is no good and doesn't turn out, well, then we'll ultimately be in a similar type problem later on, but we'll deal with that then when we have to.
I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson, you look around, my one question is who's going to partner with Quinn Hughes? I really think they missed Tanev on the blue line, and Hughes missed him last year. Second season in the league, everybody focuses on you a little bit more. I think Quinn Hughes will have a better defensive season. His offense speaks for itself. He's an elite offensive defenseman. But that to me is it going to be Pullman? Are they going to play Myers with him? That's got to be the key, is because the partner with Quinn Hughes just has to be someone who can be solid defensively, make the easy play, short passes.
I think that could be Pullman. Hughes. Why not?
Yeah.
Pullman was that guy in Winnipeg.
Yeah. I really like Connor Garland. I think he adds. Now, Brock Besser's banged up to start the season, so they hope that's not too serious. But I think Vancouver's...
Doesn't that seem odd to you, though? 88.5? Like, so even if they don't get in, I still see them in that 93, 94 point range right there knocking on the door.
Yeah,
I just think the rest of the division isn't that good.
Yeah, I would take over for sure. LA to me is the wild card team. If their improvement likely comes from a lot of youth, and I'm always hesitant to want to jump too much in on youth. It's rare that a team led by a bunch of young guys really leads. Now, they still got Doughty and they still got Kopitar, obviously, and Doughty's highly competitive. He's highly motivated. Trust me, he wants to be on that Olympic team. The thing I like about Drew Doughty is he doesn't give you the BS stock answer. He's like, of course I want to be on that team, right? That's a motivation for him. And I think
Tyler and I talked to him at the player media tour, asked him all those same things.
Oh,
and then, by the way, he came up to me in the hallway after. He goes, was I on your Olympic team? I was like, dude, I didn't do one, but I'm sure you wanted to know.
Oh, and you know what? It's the old Michael Jordan. You got to find out anything that motivates you. And Doughty, I've always liked him because Doughty doesn't give you cookie cutter answers. He doesn't play a cookie cutter game. When he gets lit up by the best player, he's like, yeah, of course I'm going to get lit up by McDavid every now and then because he's a great player. But I look for, if I stop him 8 out of 10 times, I'm doing pretty good, right? Like he's a breath of fresh air to talk to. He's ultra competitive. And I think LA, their young guys are going to benefit from having like him and Kopitar, who two real professionals, right? And it's unfortunate that Quentin got hurt already, so that's bad news. But LA to me is they could push for it if their young guys all take the step that you hope they take.
So what would you think is the over under on PointsBet for the Kings this season? Their point total
84.
It's 83.5.
Ooh. Pretty close.
So if you have them 4 or 5?
I have them 5th. I have Calgary 4th, LA 5th.
I don't know what Calgary is.
Yeah.
There's been lots of talk. There's been lots of talk about what is the Flames' identity? How do you make an identity? That's been the question that's been posed to Darryl Sutter in press conferences. I feel like more times than I can count. I don't know what they are. Obviously, you hit on Tanev earlier, leaving Van, and last year, I mean, Markstrom should be better this year. Johnny Gaudreau's in a contract year. We know that can go either way. I don't know what they are.
Well, having watched them, and I know it's preseason, but their last preseason game was basically all regulars. And even in their first preseason, the games that I watched, I felt like Calgary just played slow. They don't look like, I look in their top 6, they got good top 6 players, Kachuk, Monahan, But how many of them are like, who's their real burner in their top six? Like, I just don't know if they play. I think they want to play similar to the Daryl Sutter Kings of 2012, 13,
Well, that's
14,
absolutely what they want to play. I just don't think they have the goods to do it.
They don't have the horses. They're totally different style of players. So now they do have, Dylan Dubé, they got Mangiapane, they got some guys who could take steps this season offensively, but Calgary's a real hard one to pick. If all of their guys show up, then they've got potential to be a pretty good team. But I still question their defense, Frank.
That's why they have them fifth. I have them behind LA.
Like if you look at their top pairing defense compared to Vancouver's or Edmonton's or Vegas or even LA, I would argue that Calgary, of those five, their top pair is the weakest.
They don't have a number one for sure. I don't even know if they have a number two defenseman. Maybe Rasmus Anderson is that guy. Tanev at this point.
Yeah.
What is he?
Like, Tanev's really valuable when you play him with a highly offensive player because he's good enough defensively to cover it up. But if you're not playing him with a high octane offensive guy, then they're not going to create much offense. So, his value, I think, kind of lessens a little bit in that role.
And that leaves us with the Kraken.
Yeah, I'm not. You know what? I've seen so much hype on the Kraken. I think there's a little bit of recency bias because of the Vegas Golden Knights and everything that happened there. And I went through it. And so when the Vegas Golden Knights, they finished fifth in 2018 in goals for. Fifth for an expansion team. William Karlsson was out of his mind. He had 43 goals. Eric Holla.
Colin Miller had 41 points.
Yeah. Hey, Eric Holla had 29 goals, right?
Everyone talks about, Marc-Andre Fleury being the backstop to that. Remember the longest time that he didn't play and like Malcolm Subban went on like an 11-game winning streak?
But did you see, that? Frank? Their backup goalies played 36 games. Marc-Andre Fleury played 46. Their backup goalies... They got more wins from their backup goalies, and those guys have had games played since, right? Legacy has, I think he made one appearance in the NHL. Oscar Dance played 3 games that year. He had like a .946 save percentage. He was unconscious. 3 wins. He hasn't been back. Like they had
they had a collection of like 12 career seasons all at once.
Oh, yes. Yes, defensively, offensively. So no, I think Seattle finishes 6th because I don't think that their offense, they don't have the top 6 to compete, because when Vegas had all these guys have career years, Frank, they were between the ages of 23 to 27. I went through Seattle's top end guys. The youngest one is 28. Right? Unless you think McCann's going to be in their top 6. But guys like Schwartz and Eberle and Gord, like those guys are anywhere from 29, most of them 29 to 33. It's rare that suddenly they're going to have better years than they've had in the past, and even 60-point seasons. So I don't see Seattle in. And the other thing, Frank,
by the way,
their top 4 defense, I'm not like, they have good defense, but I don't think they got a number 1 either.
No, I definitely don't.
Or a number 2.
Yeah, but they have the goalie in Grubauer.
Yes.
So you were pretty good on the Kings. Unless you know the answer already, what do you think is the Seattle Kraken over/under points total on PointsBet?
Well, I'm going to say it's higher than the Kings because I've seen so many high I'm going to say Seattle's probably like 88.5.
92.5.
Oof. Yeah. See, there's a lot. Like, I know a lot of the analytics.
So basically, the way they have, if according to PointsBet and the over/unders, they have Vegas Seattle 1, 3. Edmonton 2, Seattle 3. Yes. I don't know. I just don't. I'm not seeing it. And then they have Calgary and Seattle tied actually at 92.5.
Well, there's a lot of. And I've talked to guys who have their formulas and it's based off the analytics. And so I'm like, hey, you know what? Some of those predictions have come right in the past for sure. Like, Seattle's, to me, interesting because of the new franchise in the league, but also because there's a very
everyone's expecting this
wide-ranging opinions, though. Yeah. Like I think Seattle is. I don't think they're going to be as good as a lot of but I could easily be wrong too. That's what makes it exciting. I crunch my numbers more on a lot of other things, age factor and looking like, because if you think you're going to be Seattle, if you're going to be Vegas or close to it, like Vegas was top 5 in goals for, and they were 8th in goals against. Like, and that's with a backup goaltender that like everything went right there. Their 3 backups. Malcolm Subban just got waived. He's not going to be in the league this year, right? Like their 3 goalies in 18, Frank. They're not even in the league anymore.
Crazy.
Yeah, like it's not going to happen. And then, San Jose and Anaheim. I have San Jose slightly ahead just because I think their defense overall, but both of those teams, I think they're in trouble. Like people forget San Jose, like maybe having Noah Vander Kane helps them from a cultural standpoint. Maybe if they say there is that much distractions and players not getting along, okay.
Makes
But
their team worse though.
Thing was last year on the ice, he was their best forward by a long shot.
Yes.
He was very consistent. Like he
career
came out
year. So when I talk about career year, it was his best season by far.
Yeah. So
we got 10 minutes left, and I want to hit on the playoffs. First, I wanted to share some news that we saw out there on Twitter this morning. John Cooper getting a 3-year extension as head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. That places him among the highest paid coaches in the league. Well deserved on that front. Who do you got coming out of the East? What does your Eastern Conference final look like? What does your Western Conference final look like?
Well, let's get to our playoff prediction brought to you by DoorDash, proud sponsor of the Nation of Network podcasts, restaurants, and more delivered right to your door. If you've never tried it, it's awesome. It can deliver food right to you. Of course, you got game nights coming up. You're like, I don't want to cook. I just want to get some pizza maybe. I want to get burgers. Maybe you want to get a little chicken parm, whatever you like. Go to use the promo code RUNDOWNDD. And you will get free delivery and 25% off your first time using it at DoorDash. So now for the playoffs, and by the way, we both have Edmonton, Vegas, and Vancouver in, I'm assuming, right? It's 3 and 5. Okay.
3 and 5, correct.
My final four, I have Colorado, Florida, Washington, and Edmonton.
Washington, that's the surprise.
Yes.
Huh.
One last run, baby. One last run for the Caps.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, I still think Ovi and Backstrom are going to be pretty good for a while. Ovi's going to keep scoring and keep scoring. I have him at 45 goals this year, 44 goals.
I hope he gets 50.
Well, that'd be awesome. Continues the assault on Gretzky's record, which if you're listening to Gretzky on Turner and everywhere else, says he hopes he does it. My final four in the East, I've got Toronto against Carolina. I think
you have Toronto beating Florida and Tampa. Wow.
Yeah.
That'd be an unreal.
I think Florida and Tampa are going to play each other in the bracket I have.
Oh, right.
One of those is going to get knocked out. Okay. And then that leaves, whether it's Toronto, Tampa, or Toronto, Florida, I just think the thing with Florida is they've made it pretty clear how they want to play. They want to run you out of the building. And what I loved about Tampa last year in the playoffs, they were like, yeah, bring it on. You want to try and play physical? We're cool with that too. We've got our line of Coleman, Goodrow, and Gord. We can match up with anyone. Our D are big enough to take you on. Sure. I don't know what kind of gas Tampa has left in the tank. And then if Florida does win, I just think that style of play will play right into Toronto's hands. I think their defense can handle it. And I just think that they've got more scoring punch to get past them.
All right. And then who do you have in the West?
In the West, I have Winnipeg against Vegas. A rematch of the conference final from 2018.
Vegas, 4 out of 5 in the final 4.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad run for them if they make it.
Nope, but I think they fall flat and fall short again from getting to the final. So I've got Winnipeg and Carolina in the final. You can call it the Paul Maurice Bowl.
Winnipeg and Carolina. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I have Colorado and Florida.
Okay.
And then I have
your Stanley Cup champion.
I have Florida. I'm all in on Florida this year. I like they've got goaltending depth. Bobrovsky's a good goalie. He's just overpaid. But
I don't even think he's going to be the starter in game 1 of the playoffs.
He might not be, and that's a good problem to have. But they probably will use both at some point. I love Barkov and Huberdeau.
Spencer Knight is my Calder Trophy winner, by the way. So gives you an indication on how much I think he's going to play.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So here's the thing. I actually, I really like Florida's team. Here's the thing that I was looking up that I couldn't really get them over the hump to get there and win the cup is it hasn't really happened in NHL history that a team comes in and doesn't have any sort of meaningful playoff success and goes all the way from not winning a round to winning the Stanley Cup final. And I think that's the real hurdle is there's kind of got to be that in between. Like you think back to, I think it was 2008, the Blackhawks getting to the West Final. And you're like, okay, or maybe it was 2009. You're like, okay, this is a team that's clearly on the rise. And in this case, doesn't there have to be that intermediate step, or can you just come in and win it all? And that's the one thing I think sort of separating Toronto as well. Like I was actually flirting with the idea of picking the Leafs to win.
Well, it's a fair point because I've looked up a lot of that too. Like the one team that jumps out to me is Carolina. Now they did when they won the Cup in 06, they lost the Cup a few years earlier with a lot of different players though in Carolina, and then they'd miss the playoffs for 4 years, and then they go to the conference final again. Like for the longest time,
but they were in the conference final before the lockout and then win the Cup after. Is that right?
Well, no, they were in the. They weren't there because Tampa Bay won the Cup in 2003-04, right?
Oh, Carolina that's right. It was Philly, yeah. Tampa.
2002, the Carolina had their kind of Cinderella run, which is 4 years earlier, and then they didn't make
you're
the
right.
playoffs.
They went 2 straight years not making the playoffs, and then there was the lockout, and then they came in and won the Cup.
So that was really the only team, Frank.
It's
so
rare.
It's very rare.
Coming out of the lockout, I don't even know if it counts because everyone's starting on the same footing.
Yeah, no, it's true. And like Florida hasn't won a playoff series, man, since '96. So it would be an amazing run to do.
Think of all the teams that have won: St. Louis, Washington. Go back all these years, they've almost always had some kind of heartache, failure that they've learned from. That I don't know. I like Florida, and I think they have as good a chance as any. I'm not seeing it, and that's another reason why I like Winnipeg. This core has been tested a little bit in the playoffs, so Winnipeg is my Cup pick.
So what was it about that you didn't like in Colorado?
Something just seems a little off there, and I think their defense. First off, they're the trendy pick. And like, part of me is like, I could easily see Colorado winning, and maybe it's unfair for me to say something's a little off. I just don't like picking what everyone else is doing. These are called bold predictions, not, the picks everyone else is making. And so I mentioned how much I like, Kemper and net. He's my Vezina pick actually. The back half of their defense, and you mentioned it, last year in the playoffs, and Nathan McKinnon talked about how fragile they were, that they were pushed around a little bit and they wilted. I don't like, obviously Makar is such a talented player. I wonder what they would have looked like last year if Eric Johnson was healthy. Bowen Byram, I would imagine, takes a bit of a step. Curtis McDermott gives you a little bit more bite, but Ryan Murray, again, I'm just not seeing it.
That's fair.
I love Devon Taves. I think Samuel Girard has a lot to learn and continue to grow. I don't like their defense to me doesn't in the depth form, it doesn't scream playoff hockey.
That's totally fair, Frank. And I compared Colorado's defense to the Final Four defense teams last year, and it wasn't even close, especially their top 4 when it comes to size and skill. And like I'll say this, and some people don't like, they want to call me it's sizeism. That's fine. I don't think you can win a Sam Girard's in your top 4. Can't win in the playoffs. The way the game's defended now, you can't. He's small to begin with, and then he plays with a mini stick. He's got the shortest stick in the league. He doesn't cover any ground. It's like a souvenir stick. So I honestly
always loved a good souvenir stick.
Colorado, until they have Girard in their third pair, or they have other guys in their top 4, I don't think that's why I didn't have them winning the Cup either.
And I really thought long and hard about, does Edmonton knock off Vegas this year coming out of the Pacific? I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think Edmonton is going to, there's a lot of people that are concerned about their team. I know Mike Smith, and I like Mike Smith because he reminds me a little bit like Drew Doughty. He's like, I didn't age 10 years. It's 4 months. So, right. And it's a valid point, right? It's a valid point. And Koskinen will be better. He's not going to be $8.99. He's not going to have to play 12 games in a row. He's not going to be without his family for 4 months. Like, that stuff can weigh on a person. You're still a human, as he said at the end. So I actually think Edmonton, and the big reason why, Frank, Edmonton has the best forward depth they've had in 15 years. And maybe better, because their top 2 guys are better than anybody they had in 06 when they had 3 really good lines running in the playoffs, but they didn't have a McDavid or a Draisaitl. And like Warren Fogle, Zach Hyman give them some added size and speed. Puljujarvi is a huge human and is I think going to have a breakout year. I think Edmonton team's going to surprise a lot of people.
I think they're going to be really good.
Yeah, like McDavid. Let's end on this.
What's your team?
What's your McDavid point prediction?
151.
Ooh.
I think he's the first player since Mario Lemieux in 96 to be a 150-point player.
Nah, I'm at 147. I know he was on pace last year for 153. And like the reason I think he's for sure over 140, Frank, is because there's going to be more power plays, and Edmonton's got the best power play.
Zach Hyman's he's gonna deliver so many pucks to him that he otherwise didn't have the help on. So we did these daily face-off predictions across all 8 guys that have joined our team: Burnside, Greeley, Gregor, McKenna, Peel, Salvador, myself, and Tyler Yaremchuk. The average on McDavid points across the 8 guys was 138.
130. What was the low?
The low was Bryce Salvador at 123. He says McDavid his theory and his computation was 5% above his career average.
Interesting.
That's the way he looked at it. He did it purely based on math.
Very based on math. All right. That's interesting low that he's only going to be 123, because like career average is great. But the only problem is if you look at McDavid's first few years till his last 3 years, and historically, from like the elite guys, Lemieux and Gretzky,
this is their time.
This is their time. Yeah. 100%. So it'll be fun to watch, man. I think this year there's going to be more 100-point players in the NHL than we've seen in a long, like there was 7 in 2006 and 2007. I think there's going to be 8.
Imagine if they played more on the ice.
Hey, dude, I'd be all over that. Imagine if they called penalties, Frank.
I feel like there's a story coming there.
There's a total story coming there. Like, I definitely think it's worthwhile to. I know we talked earlier off the top about how that would alleviate the, paying guys more money, because the PA would probably never want to go for reduced rosters. I understand it. I totally understand why, because that's lots of potential jobs. But for the excitement of your league, it's at least something to consider.
Hey, we're not trying to take any jobs away. I'm just saying they should just play less. I don't know why the 3rd or 4th line guy deserves 10 or 12 minutes a night. That's all.
Frank, it'll be fun. Quickly on John Cooper, kind of a no-brainer extension for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and I can't wait to find out what his theme is, what he's got cooking up. Last year was, is your cup full? After just winning 1 Stanley Cup. Now they've got 2. That's got to be the toughest thing as a coach, is coming up with something spicy to keep your players motivated going for a 3rd cup.
Wow, there's lots of memes involving 2 cups that people will probably use on the internet in regards to that.
What a way to end. Thank you for that.
Well, I'm just saying, you know how the internet works.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you on Friday, Frank. We'll have actual NHL games this season to discuss. And good luck on your new show starting today. We look forward to it.
The Daily Face-Off Show, Monday to Friday, 12 noon Eastern, live. We'll even have an appearance from Tyler daily. I don't know what we are getting ourselves into.
Awesome. That's been episode 70, the Dmitry Kulikov of the DFO Rundown, brought to you by Fantrax. Get in now. You got some time. Get your fantasy league in. You're doing a redraft. You're doing a keeper league, whatever it is, you can get it. And just sign up for free. If you just want to join a random league, you can go to fantrax.com/DFO Rundown. And you get in there. And also, when you're there, you can enter to win a signed Nathan McKinnon jersey. Will he hit 100 points for the first time in his career? Easy. Yeah, I would probably agree with you, Frank. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Saravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode. Delivered by DoorDash.